Has Kickstarter become the new industry standard in publishing? I think so. And I'm going to talk about why I feel that way. So, a few months ago, I wanted to, I had seen this new Kickstarter go live. I've done a few Kickstarters of my own, and I wanted to do some kind of video unpacking like what goes into like a good successful Kickstarter campaign. But like very rapidly I observed this trend of several different like major Kickstarters in comic book titles, and so I wanted to share this observation and why I think it's starting to set a new precedent for how comic books and publishing in general gets launched. Historically, if I was an author of either a comic book or maybe even a traditional novel, comics are a little different. In my recent video, How to Pitch to Image Comics, Image is, a staple of creator-owned comic book publishing. So they accept open submissions. They are a publisher. And so like it's a lot like less restrictive to go straight to Image Comics, send your pitch and proposal and hope that they would like pick it up. In traditional publishing, which I know a lot less about and I'm not an authority on, you might find an agent, and that agent would query to many larger publishers for you. It's just a lot more of a rat race, And so Kickstarter has been instrumental for helping small fledgling creators to get their first chance and to, in most cases, self-publish and bypass the industry system of publishing and releasing original creative works. And so, like 10 years ago, you would go to Kickstarter and the idea is right there in the name. It's Kickstarter, and it is meant to kickstart your project. And so a lot of people, myself included, might have used this to cover the cost of getting artwork or cover the cost of printing their book, or both, and would use that to find the funds necessary to make their work. I did another recent video on this that just went over some of the basic principles of what it takes to have a successful Kickstarter campaign and how you can use Kickstarter to like break your project up into smaller pieces. So just to cover that, if you want to watch either my recent video on pitching to Image Comics or my recent video on success for finding success on Kickstarter, please check those out. Super thrilled with the response of the Image Comics one, especially. That video, ever since I released it, has been continually growing and continually getting comments. So there's evidence that there's a lot of you out there who are interested in these topics and are looking for this information. Really appreciate it. And just as much, I think that I have, some valuable insights on kickstarting, though I'm not like, a total whiz. But anyway, please check out those recent videos, like them, and subscribe if you enjoyed them. So the point I was getting at is Kickstarter existed really for people like you and myself who are not known in the comic book industry and have no credentials and are just looking to create a platform and find an audience and get projects out there that way. Recently, a lot of people who have success and are, proven creators of original work, are continuing to use Kickstarter despite the fact that they have, like a sort of sales and distribution channel. They are using Kickstarter to launch their creative works. This isn't problematic, and I'm not like, I feel like the title of this video, or just me saying like these big creators are using Kickstarter, that's not what I'm saying. So let's just get that out of the way now. But I want to share my observations of why this is really interesting and like a really lucrative platform for anybody to find an audience and find success. And truthfully, yeah, the reason why these large names in comics are using Kickstarter is because honestly, it is better than just releasing it into stores at like Barnes and Noble or mom and pop comic book shops anyway. And I'm going to show you why. So first, I noticed Thorn, the complete Proto-BONE college strips by Jeff Smith, the creator of Bone. I was interested in this, project just because I've had the pleasure of interviewing Jeff Smith before in my past. Bone is like my first introduction into comics. So I thought this was really interesting. It's, as it says, this is the collection of comic strips that Jeff Smith did of Bone when he was in college at Ohio State University for The Lantern, the student newspaper. And so, yeah, this is just that printed collection of the Thorn comic strip. And, what's interesting is that Bone, which is this massive, like, epic fantasy novel is what it became, but it was just like told in comic books, traditional comic book strip form. So Jeff Smith and his team at Cartoon Books used Kickstarter to launch this project. If you go through, the reward tiers, all the usual suspects, I could do this in another video, like how you typically structure your reward tiers, but there's the digital tier, the trade paperback tier, a retailer tier, hardcover with pin set, retailer 5-cover exclusive, or 5-pack exclusive cover, hardcover and trade paperback collected. So everything's presented here. One thing I think was really unique was the decision to have the retailer tiers that, for just basically a little more than, like, basically for the cost of 2.5 times a book, you'd get 5. And so there's like a lot of margin that retailers can get their money back, and they can buy 5 of these and sell them. I think that's a super unique way of using the Kickstarter platform, just like bypassing, having to go straight to Diamond or whatever distribution service a comic book store owner uses. They're just offering people the chance to have this. And it's also kind of unique because, for all I know, they aren't going into large commercial retail chains like Barnes and Noble. This is perhaps just a way to give some favor back to indie stores. But so, yeah, within the campaign, there's obviously the trade, the hardcover, pin sets, exclusive prints, original artwork, all of the stuff you would see in a normal Kickstarter campaign. And so Kickstarter gives this unique opportunity that when people are captive and they're like gonna make a purchasing decision, you can add more onto it. And you can include prints and artwork and pins and other types of merchandise. There's also add-ons. So a person could, when they're checking out, go and buy other books in the series. Like, you could buy, in theory, the other Bone novels, the omnibus, the colored versions, the Rose spinoff, the Coda. Like, there's a lot of other stuff you could do here to make a purchase and just go beyond buying the one thing you're going to buy. Shortly after the Bone Kickstarter, I noticed this campaign launch through Evil Inc. in partnership with Boom Studios for the Amory Wars, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4, Volume 2. And so this is the conclusion of the Amory Wars saga. For those of you who don't know, it is the comic book adaptation of the music written by the band Coheed and Cambria. They are a concept band, and they put all of their, all of the story that's in their music into this comic book adaptation that's been going on since the mid-2000s. This is actually the 20th anniversary of the Amory Wars. So pretty similar campaign to Bone. You have all the usual things. This was actually really interesting that they did do single issues, just like the printed monthly floppy, which is the traditional method that this book has followed for years. They would distribute the monthlies and then do a trade paper, 2 trade paperbacks, and then do the full hardcover volume and keep amping it up. But they just chose to include this as like a tier for people who want to continue that collection. They also have the hardcover version and collected into slipcases and, incremental, adding those things together, coming signed, coming with posters, made a really compelling campaign, and actually says right here at the top, highest day one total ever. I'm assuming that's either backer kit or Boom's highest day one total, but glad to know it was a success for them, and we'll get back to that in a minute. And then last but not least, this was all within 2 or 3 months of each other. This was also a Boom Studios project, though on Kickstarter and not backer kit for whatever reason. Power Rangers The Return, a new comic book series. I haven't read any Power Rangers comics, but I was intrigued by the different campaigns that were launching at the time, and I was like, well, they were marketing it as this sort of relaunch of the Power Rangers comic book series, so I thought it was a good time to get involved. So, this was, for me, I was more kind of testing the waters, and I just bought the normal $35 hardcover for this one. But yeah, again, you can see, what I found interesting about this and why I'm using all of these examples is that in linear fashion, it made sense for me that Bone was doing a Kickstarter campaign for Thorn, because Cartoon Books is a small, kind of almost family owned and operated business. There's only so many, it's not like a huge company. It's really just Jeff Smith and the team that's required to publish his works. And so this made sense to me. He had been doing the Kickstarter model for a while with Tukey Save the Humans and other books. The retailer thing made a ton of sense to me. If they were just usually our audience only buys so many, and so if they just need to, get 5 sold to people at once, and that's enough for most mom and pop shops, that makes sense that it's going to get out to the people who are the fans. This is also more evidenced by the Amory Wars project. It continued to make sense for me because the Amory Wars is, again, the novelization of Coheed and Cambria's music. So to me, my thought behind that was, well, this is a very targeted audience. The fans of the book, the fans of the music are the ones who buy the books typically. That hasn't stopped them from being New York Times bestselling authors before, but it made sense that they were just going to go direct to their consumers and possibly bypass the need to release in stores, and hope that after 20 years of doing this that comic book shops would still be interested, because I'm sure it is compared to something like your weekly superhero stuff or even The Walking Dead, pretty low velocity SKU. It's really probably just the fans that are going to those stores and requesting that those books get in. So that made sense to me why both Bone and the Amory Wars would be doing it this way. And, Bone is a huge success in the comic book industry, but it's from the 90s. It's been around for a while. I could see them being hey, it's not as timely, so we're just going to release this to our users. And all of that, suffice to say, is that surprisingly, out of these 3 projects, the Amory Wars is actually the one that made the most money, and I'll unpack that in a minute too. But so then what really surprised me was this relaunch of the Power Rangers IP, using Kickstarter, that was a little weird to me, because if there was like a franchise that needed like no help getting interest and getting into stores, Power Rangers would be one of the ones that I was like, yeah, why wouldn't it just launch straight into retail chains? And so that's where like that part of my brain opened up, that I was like, I really think that people are just finding the actual method of these Kickstarter campaigns to be more lucrative and make more money, and they're more engaging than just a simple relaunch. I probably would not have bought this book, right? I may have seen it in the store and been like, oh, that's cool that they're doing a focus on the Pink Ranger, I ought to pick that up sometime. But I don't know if I would have like made the impulse decision that comes with like online e-commerce, like time, and like there's such a precedent for like, this is like a limited time offer and you have to get in on it now. Like that's like that activity of like the all or nothing system, that was enough to push me over the edge to buy this book. And so, again, as evidence though, I only bought the $35 volume, whereas with Bone and with the Amory Wars, I spent an average of $100. Or with Bone, I did the hardcover, no other add-ons, and with the Coheed one, I did hardcover slipcase. But I didn't go further beyond that. I have enough stuff, here in my room. I didn't have room for any more posters or trinkets. But so yeah, I just found that interesting that these campaigns really seemed to be leveraging, if you look right here, even funded in 45 minutes, highest day one total ever. This project was also funded in under 48 hours. And so when it went live, you'll see stretch goal number 1 was unlocked on October 18th. Stretch goal number 2 was unlocked on October 18th. Number 3, it was like, this total snowball effect, just this momentum behind the project that, they planned ahead for this immediate success, right? Even though the campaign has modest goals and only needed $30,000 to fund, the bare minimum was $30,000 in order to print the number of volumes that they were going to get out there, right? But everything beyond that point is, I guess, just profit margin, right? They're selling more volume than they intended. They're selling prints and artwork and exclusives and add-ons, and that's all adding up to what was more than 10 times what they were looking for. And so they clearly had all of those updates planned. Great momentum. They're able to market, hey, we, funded in 24 hours or 48 hours or 2 hours even. And now we have the next 30 days to keep building mass. So that's like what was really surprising for me again, was like, then this Amory Wars Saga 1 launched and it did almost $1 million. And there's a lot to be said here about just like, on either side of this, Bone and Power Rangers, I would expect those to be like, in terms of comic books, larger IPs. But this is such a focused fan base that pretty much I would assume anyone who is like, who considers themselves a fan of this work, they're going to go and buy this comic. And the actual like rate of people who picked it up is probably substantial compared to these other 2 projects, where like plenty of people like Power Rangers, but they might not feel like the call to action super compelling or not. And so, on average between these 3 projects, I did the math. Bone had an average order value of $96. The Amory Wars had an average order value of $141. And Power Rangers had an average order value of $101. So like, even though I only spent $35 on Power Rangers and I only spent $75 on Bone, because of these add-ons and these perks, on average, they were making more money than that. And that's the thing, right? I could go to Barnes and Noble or, some other franchise. I can see this book, or even Amazon, right? I can buy it, but that potential to add on is so well evidenced here that, like, if you are a fan and you believe in these projects, you're going to go for the exclusives, right? You're going to include the art prints, the pin sets, and all that stuff. And I think that stuff is where, again, publishers and creators are really finding Kickstarter a really juicy incentive, and why you would go beyond your normal way of doing things and do a Kickstarter instead. Hopping on to that a little bit, so going into traditional publishing, this project, Seasons of Shadowhunters by Cassandra Clare, this is like a traditional author. Her properties have been adapted into TV shows and movies. She clearly has almost 10,000 people backed this. No need, right, to do something on Kickstarter. But again, we have almost 10,000 people raising over $1 million. So on average, these people are spending more than $100 for this project and just going straight to the source for their entertainment. And one other add-on to that, if you think this is pretty surprising, the year of Sanderson, almost 200,000 backers raised $41 million on Kickstarter for books. And I don't even know how to express this, but this is literally the highest grossing Kickstarter project of all time by a long margin. And Kickstarter is not a platform that's exclusive to books and comics, right? You can make movies on Kickstarter. You can make appliances on Kickstarter, right? The coolest cooler, or shark bands, or there's plenty of unique, obscure things that have or even things that have mass market appeal that have been done on Kickstarter. But here we have a high fantasy author who's carved a pretty particular niche, going back to the Coheed reference. He's got a bit of a niche, but Brandon Sanderson, over the course of the COVID years, he's a very prolific author. If you don't know anything about him, he spends all of his time writing, and because he was not traveling and doing conventions and doing other things to promote his work, he just wrote. And so he made this Kickstarter campaign, which at the time promised 4 new novels and a monthly subscription box that had, mugs and toys and bookmarks and, paperweights and, there was probably other stuff in the project, but this was very substantial because it just had this, it had a diehard fan base, but I also just think the momentum of it was so, I thought this campaign capped out at $20 million. It's twice, it made twice as much money as I thought for over 200,000 people. So this is just the key example. If you build it, they will come. And so, I really don't have much to say about this other than just giving my very basic insight that again, many authors who need no help at all are choosing to use the Kickstarter platform to launch their projects. And so for me, I've started to think about it differently as you don't need to just go to Kickstarter and be I need the money to start my project, which is what it was for years ago. My approach going forward is I'm working on my comic book now. I'm going to do the 12 issues, and once it's ready and I have the comic book art done and I've gotten the bids for how much it's going to cost to print it and how much it's going to cost to ship it, and I've made, I've pre-planned some other fun add-ons and reward tiers, I'm just going to launch it. I'm just going to launch it like it's a project that's already done, even though I have no following. But there's a lot that can be done with, being promoted as like projects we love is something that Kickstarter is very keen on, and there's a lot of support there. I'm going to advertise the book. I'm just going to give it, I'm going to go straight to how industry professionals are doing it. And even if I'm, intending to submit this to Image or other publishers, I'm going to include in there, I'd really like to launch it on Kickstarter, because I just think that there's a lot of, proof and precedent that this platform is going to continue being just an important place for these activations. But yeah, I'm just intending to go, straight to Kickstarter. I'm going to include it in my pitch to publishers that when I launch it, I would like to do it as a Kickstarter, and just try and use that momentum of that platform, because it's a very effective tool to have campaigns, to gain awareness, and to convert sales. And I truly believe that if you are someone who has, little to no following, if you have a good enough project, you could do it this way. And I have seen other projects that, I have no idea who the authors are, but I have seen books on Kickstarters that seem to be from totally independently published books that go to this level of detail and have fleshed things out and are just like hoping they find their audience this way. So yeah, even for me, I've decided that, in my own creative process for working on my comic book, I've decided that I'm going to do the 12 issues that constitute, a full volume, like some of these projects have showcased. I'm going to figure out what it costs to print all that and ship all that. And I'm going to make other add-ons, and I'm going to try and just go straight to the end instead of starting, I need startup funds to launch my project. I'm going to invest all of that money up front and make the project and hope to get it back using the Kickstarter platform. And so that feels like a gamble, but I've seen projects that are doing it this way. Here's a project called Frontier. I know nothing about this book. I know nothing about its author. It's done very well. It's tracking similarly to other projects that I've just unpacked here, where it's more a similar amount of backers to Bone, less money. So most people are buying what looks to be like they're just starting right here at either the soft cover or the premium hardcover. But this is a really cute project that did everything, that made like a fully engrossed universe, that, has reward tiers. And I, again, as someone who knows nothing about this project, it's cute. It explains the universe really well, and it exceeded its goal. It actually greatly exceeded the goal that was needed to bring it to life. And so that's something that's, it only needed $7,500. It did much more than that. So that's something that's like worth noting, right? Is like, I'm sure this author had other books. But again, it's a project that I've never heard of. And I think that, if you want to launch a book, this is really the method to try and follow, because industry leaders are starting to do it this way. So that's really all I have to share today. I hope this was, useful commentary. It's not really so much like, here's the steps you should follow, but it's a market trend I've observed. I wanted to share it because I think it's very interesting. And I do think that these campaigns, these launch campaigns, are going to continue to be something you see around. If you have any questions about any of this, please share your thoughts with me. If there's another topic you'd like me to go over, I'd be happy to hear it. Just leave something down in the comments. Again, my recent videos, especially how to pitch to Image Comics, has been seeing consistent viewership over the last month. Really appreciate you guys watching that video and sharing your very kind words and support with me. So, if you like these videos, I'm going to try and keep doing them. I am not an expert. I'm not a published author, but just trying to do my best. So that's all I got to say today. Thank you for watching, and take care.